The city woke slowly that morning. The sun, pale but promising, glinted off the glass of skyscrapers and the wet pavements of the bustling streets. People hurried by in a rhythmic chaos, briefcases tapping, heels clicking, cars honking. Everyone seemed to know where they were going, confident in their stride, in their purpose. But amid the moving tide, a young woman in her mid-20s moved differently. She wasn't part of the hurry, not really. Her steps were careful, almost hesitant, each one measured. Her olive green shirt was simple, a little faded at the seams, and her shoes bore the faint scuffs of many long walks on the unforgiving city pavement. Her hair was pulled back, practical, yet some strands fell across her forehead, catching the morning light. In her hand, she clutched a worn-out folder, a collection of carefully printed resumes she had edited over countless sleepless nights. Inside that folder was more than a list of past experiences. It held her hopes, her quiet dreams, her desire to prove she belonged somewhere, anywhere that would see her potential beyond her circumstances. She paused for a moment on the edge of the crowd, just outside a towering office building. Its glass doors reflected the city like a mirror, catching the early sunlight in sharp angles. People passed her, nearly brushing against her shoulders, their eyes focused on the skyscraper ahead, oblivious to the woman who stood, shoulders tense, at their feet. She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling, small and quick. She could feel her pulse racing. This was supposed to be just another interview, another attempt at earning a place in a world that often overlooked women like her, people who came from modest backgrounds, who didn't have polished shoes or designer bags or networks to pull them forward. And yet, today felt different. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the slight chill in the air that made her grip the folder tighter. Whatever it was, it added weight to her steps, and still she moved forward. The revolving doors of the building swooshed quietly as she entered. The warmth of the lobby hit her immediately, a subtle contrast to the cold street outside. Bright overhead lights reflected off marble floors and polished brass accents, giving the room a muted golden glow. The receptionist looked up from behind her immaculate desk, eyes flicking to the woman in the doorway for a fleeting moment before returning to her phone. No warmth, no curiosity, just efficiency. She swallowed nervously, approaching the counter. "Good morning," she said softly, voice carrying more hope than confidence. The receptionist barely looked up. "Who's in?" she asked, tone neutral, almost clipped. "Yes." Her words came out carefully, measured, as though each syllable mattered. The receptionist's fingers tapped across the keyboard, quick and impersonal. "Who?" She said it, and then for a moment she felt the familiar sting of invisibility. She had said her name 100 times in other offices. Here it felt no different. She waited, heart hammering, hoping the receptionist would do more than just type a few letters, hoping someone in this building might see more than her outward appearance. "Take a seat," the receptionist finally said, pointing toward a small waiting area to the side. The words weren't unkind, but they carried no warmth. She nodded politely and walked over, placing her folder carefully on her lap, clutching it with both hands. The waiting area was crowded. Young men in perfectly pressed suits, women with shiny shoes and confident expressions, all seated with the poise of people accustomed to corporate corridors. She felt suddenly small, almost invisible, yet determined. She adjusted her posture, sat up straight, and tried to steady her breathing. Around her, snippets of conversation floated in the air, discussions of networking events, recent promotions, weekend getaways. Every word was a reminder of how far removed she felt from this world, a world that seemed designed for others. But she reminded herself, quietly, internally, that she had something they didn't, something that couldn't be measured by clothing or connections, her resilience. She glanced around, noticing subtle details she had missed before in her previous attempts. The woman in the corner, tapping her pen nervously, probably a candidate like her. The man beside her, reviewing his tablet with a calm, confident air. Each person was in their element here. Each had likely walked these hallways before with purpose. And she was stepping into the unknown. A sudden noise pulled her attention, the soft swoosh of the revolving doors. A group of executives entered, laughter and polished shoes clacking against marble. Their ease, their effortless confidence made her grip her folder tighter. And yet, she straightened her back, reminding herself that she belonged here too. If not by appearance, then by potential, by grit, by determination that had carried her through years of struggle. She didn't notice at first, but someone was watching. Not the receptionist, not the passing executives. Someone sitting quietly at a desk further down the hall, observing with quiet interest. She didn't know who it was, but somehow she felt it. A presence that made her slightly less invisible, a small ember of hope glowing where there had been doubt. She adjusted her folder on her lap, taking another deep breath. This is it, she thought. No more waiting, no more doubting. The tension in her chest didn't ease entirely, but it shifted. A quiet determination settled, a feeling that perhaps this day could be different. Perhaps this place, with its polished floors and endless corridors, could finally be a place where her story mattered. And as she sat there, waiting, she couldn't know that someone's eyes were indeed on her, watching her with curiosity, with recognition, with a subtle smile that promised her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. She didn't know yet that her ordinary day, her simple desire for a job, was about to intersect with an extraordinary person, someone whose surprise would change her life forever. The waiting area hummed with quiet tension. The soft murmur of conversations, the occasional rustle of papers, and the distant clatter of coffee cups created a symphony of ordinary corporate life, but to her it sounded like a storm. Every glance she stole toward the other candidates reminded her how different she felt. They were polished, confident, and assured, while she still clutched her folder like a lifeline, nerves coiling in her stomach. She shifted slightly in her chair, adjusting the folder on her lap. The pages inside were perfectly arranged, resumes meticulously typed and proofread, but she felt like none of that mattered here, not in this room filled with poised, confident strangers who seemed to belong effortlessly. A young man in a crisp suit leaned back in his chair, reviewing his tablet with ease, flicking through graphs and numbers as if he owned the office already. Beside him, a woman in her late 20s flipped through a portfolio, exuding an air of sophistication she couldn't quite emulate. Even the receptionist's indifferent glance seemed to remind her of her place, an outsider trying to fit into a world that rarely noticed people like her. Her hands twitched involuntarily, one gripping the folder, the other smoothing a crease that wasn't really there. She tried to focus on her breathing, slow inhales and exhales, as her mind ran through the countless reasons why she might fail. She had been rejected so many times before, doors closed politely in her face, emails ignored, opportunities slipping away before she even had a chance to prove herself. Each experience had chipped away at her confidence, leaving only a fragile determination that today had to be different. Her eyes wandered to the office doors at the far end of the room. Behind them, she knew, sat the hiring managers, the decision-makers, the gatekeepers to her future. Each time someone was called in, her pulse quickened, only to slow again when they emerged smiling or shaking hands, walking away with an air of accomplishment that made her chest tighten with both envy and longing. She thought about her life outside this office. Long hours at temp jobs, unpaid internships, evenings spent polishing her skills and dreams while barely scraping by. She remembered the nights she cried quietly on her small apartment floor, wondering if she would ever get the chance she deserved. And yet, despite all the obstacles, she had persisted. Each rejection, each dismissal had strengthened her resolve. She was here now, and that alone was proof of her courage. A subtle shift in the room drew her attention. The receptionist, who had returned to her phone, glanced up once more. This time her gaze lingered a fraction longer on the young woman. Perhaps it was nothing, but she felt it. A flicker of acknowledgement, a small sign that she had been noticed, however briefly. It was enough to ignite a spark of hope. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Candidates were called one by one, disappearing into offices, returning later with expressions ranging from triumph to quiet disappointment. She observed each interaction with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. What would they ask her? Would they see beyond the simple green shirt, the worn shoes, the small folder of papers in her hand? Could she make them see the determination, the intelligence, the resilience that had carried her here? Her mind wandered back to her preparation. She had rehearsed answers, prepared anecdotes, polished stories of her past experiences. But she knew that what mattered most wasn't perfection, it was authenticity. She had to convey who she truly was, not who she thought they wanted her to be. The thought steadied her nerves slightly. She reminded herself, I am more than appearances. I am more than my resume. I am capable, and I will show them. Just then, a faint sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway. A man walked past the waiting area, his gaze scanning the room. She didn't notice him at first, but then she felt it, a quiet, almost imperceptible awareness, as if someone was observing her with curiosity. Not judgment, not dismissal, but genuine attention. She looked up briefly, trying to catch a glimpse of who it might be. The figure retreated behind the door of one of the offices, leaving her with a flutter of anticipation she couldn't explain. Who could it be? Why did it matter so much that someone's eyes were on her? She pushed the thought aside, forcing herself to focus on the task at hand, waiting, breathing, preparing for the moment when her name would finally be called. Time seemed elastic in that waiting room. Each tick of the clock, each passing moment, felt both endless and fleeting. She reviewed her folders silently, rehearsing answers in her mind, imagining questions, envisioning the way she would respond. She tried to channel calmness, but inside her heart raced, a rapid drumbeat echoing her anxious excitement. The room's atmosphere intensified her internal struggle. Candidates spoke softly to one another, sharing small jokes or nervous observations. Each laugh, each confident gesture made her feel simultaneously part of the world and apart from it. She reminded herself that this was not a competition in the traditional sense. It was a chance to be seen for what she truly was. Suddenly, a voice called her name. It was calm, polite, but carried authority. Her head snapped up. That was it, the moment she had been waiting for. She rose slowly, smoothing her skirt and taking a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly, but she held the folder firmly as though it were a shield and a symbol of all her efforts. As she walked toward the office, she noticed the man from earlier again. He was no longer just a passing figure. He was seated at a desk further down the hall, watching quietly. Their eyes met for a brief second, and she felt something unexpected, a quiet acknowledgement, an unspoken recognition of her presence and potential. She didn't know who he was yet, but something in that look told her that her life was about to change. Each step toward the office was deliberate, measured, and full of tension. She rehearsed polite greetings in her mind, imagined confident responses, and tried to calm the storm of thoughts racing through her head. The hallway seemed longer than usual, stretching like a bridge between uncertainty and possibility. Finally, she reached the door. A deep breath. Her hand hovered over the handle. She paused, remembering all the struggles, all the nights of doubt, all the quiet perseverance that had brought her here. This is it, she thought. This is where everything changes, or it doesn't, but at least I tried. She opened the door. Inside, she saw him, a man in his early 50s, dressed impeccably in a dark tailored suit and a gold tie, seated behind a large polished desk. He looked up from his papers with an expression that was calm, composed, but curious. There was no judgment in his eyes, no fleeting glance of disinterest. He simply observed her, as if evaluating not just her credentials, but her essence. The room was spacious yet inviting, bathed in warm daylight streaming through large windows. The office was neat, organized, and professional, but it didn't feel cold. Somehow it felt human. And for the first time that day, she felt the tension in her chest ease just a fraction. He gestured toward the chair across from him. "Please, have a seat," he said. His voice was steady, confident, but there was a subtle warmth to it, a hint that he wasn't just conducting another interview, that he might actually see her. As she sat down, folders still clutched in her hands, she realized that everything leading to this moment, the anxiety, the long nights, the quiet perseverance, had all been preparation for this single encounter. And in that instant, she felt something shift within her. This was no longer just a routine interview. This was a turning point. The air in the room seemed charged with possibility. The questions he would ask, the responses she would give, and the decisions yet to be made, all of it hung in a delicate balance. She wasn't just here for a job anymore. She was here for recognition, validation, and the chance to show that her journey, her struggles, and her determination mattered. And though she didn't know it yet, this encounter would not only define her career, but change her entire life. The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving the bustling world of the waiting room behind. She found herself in a space that was at once intimidating and inviting. The office was large, with polished wooden floors, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and shelves neatly stocked with books, awards, and artifacts reflecting decades of work. Every detail spoke of success, precision, and meticulous planning. And yet, Despite the grandeur, there was a subtle warmth. The light was soft, not harsh. The air carried a faint scent of coffee and polished wood, familiar and comforting. She noticed the small framed photographs on the desk, a mix of personal moments and professional achievements. For a fleeting moment, she wondered who this man was beyond the suit, beyond the office, beyond the success she could barely imagine. The CEO, seated behind a large desk, looked at her carefully. He didn't glance at her folder right away, didn't ask her credentials or titles. Instead, he simply studied her. His eyes were calm, observant, but they carried an undercurrent of curiosity. There was no judgment there, no dismissal, only attentive interest. "Good morning," he said, his voice even but welcoming. She moved toward the chair, smoothing her skirt, clutching the folder in her hands. As she saw it, she could feel her heartbeat quicken. But there was something in his gaze that made the rapid pounding less of fear and more of anticipation, a recognition she hadn't felt in years. "I've reviewed your resume," he began, finally glancing at the paper she had so carefully prepared. "But before we discuss positions or experience, tell me something. What drives you?" The question caught her off guard. She had rehearsed answers to typical interview questions, skills, accomplishments, strengths. But this was different. It wasn't a test of credentials. It was a test of her essence, her character, her values. She paused, taking a deep breath. I want to make a difference," she said slowly, feeling the words take shape. "Not just in my life, but in the lives of those around me. I've faced a lot of obstacles, and I know what it feels like to be overlooked, to feel invisible." His eyes didn't waver. There was a faint nod, a flicker of recognition, as though he understood what she was saying on a level that went beyond words. "That's a strong perspective," he said. Her chest tightened. She had expected evaluation, judgment, perhaps polite dismissal. But here, in this room, she felt something rare, acknowledgement.
For the first time in a long while, someone was seeing not just her exterior, not just the polished image of a candidate, but her heart, her resilience, her determination. He leaned back slightly, studying her for a moment longer. Then a small smile appeared, not condescending, not pitying, but genuine. "Tell me about a time when you faced a challenge that seemed insurmountable." She thought back to the countless nights she had spent juggling multiple jobs just to pay rent while studying and preparing herself. The time she had stayed up until dawn perfecting a project that had been dismissed by others, only to receive no recognition. She spoke carefully, her voice steadying as she recounted her story. Every word carried weight, authenticity, and emotion. She could see that he was listening, fully present, absorbing not just her narrative, but the effort, the struggle, and the growth embedded in it. As she spoke, something inside her shifted. The anxiety that had gripped her since entering the building began to ebb, replaced by a quiet confidence. Here was a person who wasn't measuring her by the usual metrics, titles, appearances, experience, but by her potential, her integrity, and her spirit. She realized that her story, her journey, her perseverance mattered more than she had ever allowed herself to believe. He asked follow-up questions, probing gently but thoughtfully, exploring her values, her problem-solving skills, and her creativity. With each response, she felt herself opening up, revealing layers of her personality that she had long kept hidden, afraid of judgment. And with each answer, she saw a spark of approval, interest, and admiration in his eyes. "You have a way of seeing challenges differently," he said finally. "Most people focus on the obstacles. You focus on what can be created from them." She felt a small shiver of pride, the kind that comes from being understood, truly understood, by someone who matters. For the first time, she sensed that she wasn't just auditioning for a job. She was being recognized for the entirety of who she was. He leaned forward, hands resting on the polished surface of the desk. "I have to be honest. Positions here aren't just about skills. They're about character, initiative, empathy, vision." Her eyes widened slightly, disbelief mingling with hope. Could it be that simple?
She whispered almost to herself. He smiled, a warmth in his eyes that seemed to light the room. Because potential isn't always obvious, and because sometimes the people who are overlooked have the most to offer. I've learned to look beyond appearances, beyond resumes, beyond assumptions. Today, I see someone with courage, intelligence, and resilience. Tears threatened to rise in her eyes, but she blinked rapidly, trying to maintain composure. This was surreal. After years of feeling invisible, unseen, and unworthy, someone, not just anyone, but a person of influence and success, was affirming her value. "You're going to have opportunities here," he continued, voice steady, deliberate. "Opportunities to lead, to innovate, to grow, and to make a real difference." A small, almost involuntary smile curved her lips. The weight she had carried for years, the fear, the rejection, the quiet despair, felt lighter somehow. She realized that this moment was more than a turning point in her career. It was a turning point in her life. The CEO paused, studying her once more. "I can see that you're ready to take responsibility, to contribute meaningfully, and to rise above challenges. That is exactly the kind of person this company, and the world, needs." She nodded, words failing her for a brief moment. Instead, she let her expression convey what she couldn't articulate: gratitude, determination, hope. She had entered the room with nerves and doubt. She would leave with purpose and possibility. As she stood to shake his hand, the gesture was more than formal. It was symbolic. It represented the bridging of two worlds, her humble beginnings and the doors of opportunity now opening before her. And as she left the office, she carried with her not just a job opportunity, but a newfound confidence, a belief in her worth, and the understanding that someone had truly seen her for who she was. And though she didn't know it yet, this recognition would set in motion a series of events, challenges, and triumphs that would not only redefine her career, but transform her life entirely. The waiting room, once intimidating, now seemed like a threshold crossed. The sunlight streaming through the windows felt warmer. The hum of the city outside seemed softer, more inviting. She had stepped into a place of judgment and emerged with acknowledgement. The personal discovery she experienced in that office wasn't just about being seen. It was about understanding her own value, realizing that resilience, authenticity, and courage could never be measured by appearance, background, or circumstance. She had learned that even in a world that often overlooks the humble and the unpolished, there are those who can recognize greatness, potential, and heart. And in that revelation, a seed was planted, a seed that would grow into transformation, success, and fulfillment in ways she had never dared to imagine. The days following the interview unfolded like a carefully choreographed rhythm, each one a mixture of anticipation, challenge, and subtle triumphs. She had been offered a position tailored to her strengths, not the standard role she had applied for, but something unique, something that spoke to her potential. She accepted immediately, aware that this opportunity was rare, a chance to redefine not just her career, but her life. Her first day at the company was bright, the sun pouring through large glass windows that framed the bustling city outside. The office was alive with movement, colleagues walking briskly, phones ringing softly, keyboards clicking in a synchrony that felt both chaotic and energizing. She stepped in, her olive green outfit simple but neat, carrying her notebook and a quiet determination. Each step she took echoed in her mind. She belonged here, not by chance, but by the resilience that had carried her through years of struggle. Her desk was positioned near a large window, allowing sunlight to illuminate her workspace. As she settled in, she noticed the subtle differences between herself and others, the tailored suits, the polished shoes, the confident air that many carried effortlessly. For a brief moment, doubt whispered in her mind. Could she truly keep up with this environment? Could she meet expectations that seemed so far above what she had experienced before? But then she remembered the CEO's words during the interview. "You have the potential." That phrase, simple yet profound, anchored her confidence. It reminded her that potential wasn't measured by appearances or experience alone. It was nurtured by courage, adaptability, and heart. She drew a deep breath and began her first task. The initial days were a test. She navigated the office's systems, learned the workflows, and observed her colleagues. Some glanced at her curiously, others with mild skepticism, and a few with subtle encouragement. She realized that earning respect wasn't immediate. It had to be demonstrated through competence, initiative, and consistency. One afternoon, she was assigned a small but crucial project, analyzing client feedback and proposing improvements to a service process. At first, the task seemed daunting, with intricate systems and data that others took years to master. But she approached it methodically. She organized her notes, highlighted key patterns, and brainstormed innovative solutions. Her mind, honed by years of overcoming obstacles, thrived under pressure. The next morning, she presented her findings to her manager and team.
Her voice, steady and confident, outlined the issues clearly, offering actionable suggestions, and showcased a perspective that hadn't been considered before. A few colleagues exchanged surprised glances, impressed by the depth of her insight. The manager nodded approvingly, and for the first time in this office, she felt a quiet surge of validation. Her confidence grew steadily with each success. She realized that her challenges outside the office, long hours, financial struggles, constant uncertainty, had prepared her in ways no formal training could. She had learned resilience, patience, problem-solving, and empathy, qualities that were now proving invaluable in her professional life. Beyond tasks and projects, she began forming connections with colleagues. Small interactions, sharing a cup of coffee, collaborating on reports, offering help to someone struggling, created bonds that transcended the transactional nature of office relationships. She learned to navigate office politics with grace, not by competition, but by building trust and showing genuine interest in others. The CEO, too, kept a watchful but unobtrusive eye on her progress. Occasionally, he would pass by her desk, offering a word of encouragement or asking a thoughtful question about her work. Each interaction was brief but meaningful, reinforcing her belief that he genuinely valued her contributions. She began to see the mentorship hidden behind his casual observations, guidance without micromanagement, confidence without arrogance. Months passed, and her transformation became evident. Tasks that had once seemed intimidating now felt manageable. She developed innovative solutions, proposed new initiatives, and began mentoring newer employees, sharing insights she had gained from her own struggles. Her humility, resilience, and intelligence drew admiration, and slowly, skepticism gave way to respect. One day, the CEO called her into his office. She entered, expecting a routine check-in, but the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. He gestured for her to sit. "I've been observing your progress," he said, a rare smile forming. Her heart raced. "Thank you," she whispered, feeling both pride and disbelief. He continued, leaning forward slightly. "I want to give you an opportunity to lead a new initiative, a project that will affect company strategy and client engagement on a large scale. This isn't just about doing your job." Tears threatened to rise, but she blinked them away. The weight of this moment, the culmination of years of effort, struggle, and quiet perseverance, settled heavily on her shoulders, but it was a weight she welcomed. She realized that this was more than a promotion. It was recognition of her growth, her resilience, and her potential. The next weeks were a whirlwind. She threw herself into the project with energy and focus, coordinating with teams, presenting strategies, and refining processes. She faced setbacks, unexpected challenges, miscommunications, and moments of self-doubt, but she approached each obstacle with determination and adaptability. Where others saw problems, she saw opportunities for learning and innovation. Her colleagues began to notice the change, not just in her work, but in her demeanor. Confidence radiated from her, tempered by humility. She offered help without condescension, celebrated others' successes genuinely, and became a source of inspiration within her team. One afternoon, during a particularly challenging meeting, a colleague expressed frustration over a tight deadline. She stepped forward calmly, offering a solution she had prepared, and guided the team through a revised workflow that not only met the deadline, but improved efficiency. The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted in acknowledgement. Even the senior manager, known for his critical eye, nodded appreciatively.
These moments, small but significant, reinforced her transformation. She realized that success wasn't about avoiding failure. It was about resilience, empathy, and the ability to see opportunities where others saw obstacles. Her journey from anxious, uncertain newcomer to confident, respected team leader was unfolding in real time, a testament to perseverance and character. Outside of work, her life also began to shift. The confidence she developed in the office spilled over into her personal life. She approached challenges with a new perspective, navigated social situations with greater ease, and allowed herself to embrace opportunities that once seemed out of reach. The CEO, observing from afar, noted the ripple effect of her presence. She wasn't just excelling individually, she was elevating the team, fostering collaboration, and creating an environment where others felt encouraged to contribute. Her impact extended beyond measurable results. It was felt in morale, culture, and inspiration. Weeks later, the project she led was presented to the executive board. Her strategies, insights, and leadership were praised, and the initiative received full approval. She stood in the boardroom, heart pounding yet composed, realizing the enormity of what she had accomplished. The room that had once felt intimidating now seemed like a stage for her capabilities, a platform where her voice mattered, where her ideas could shape real outcomes. As she left the boardroom, a colleague whispered, "You've changed the way we all think about this work." Her smile was quiet but radiant. She thought of all the years of struggle, all the nights of uncertainty, all the moments of doubt that had brought her to this point. Every obstacle had prepared her for this moment. Every challenge had honed her skills, and every act of perseverance had led her to the recognition she now received. The personal transformation she experienced was profound. She had not only proven herself capable, but had discovered the depths of her own resilience, creativity, and influence. She had moved from being overlooked to being valued, from being uncertain to being confident, from surviving to thriving. And through it all, she carried with her the humility and empathy that had defined her journey. She understood that her transformation wasn't just about her success. It was about the people she influenced, the team she inspired, and the opportunities she could now create for others.
By the end of the first year, her name had become synonymous with innovation, leadership, and integrity within the company. She had not only achieved career milestones, but had embraced a personal evolution that would guide her for years to come. She had stepped into a world that once seemed unreachable and had transformed it, not through luck, but through relentless effort, intelligence, and heart. Her story, once defined by struggle and uncertainty, was now a testament to resilience, courage, and the transformative power of being seen and valued for who she truly was. The months had passed quickly, each one marked by steady growth, challenges overcome, and relationships strengthened. She had transformed from a tentative newcomer into a confident professional, respected by colleagues and admired by her managers. Yet, despite all the progress, she remained grounded. She remembered the quiet girl who had clutched a folder in a lobby months ago, filled with hope, anxiety, and determination. That girl had dreamed of opportunity. This woman now had the power to shape reality. One snowy afternoon, the CEO requested a private meeting. The snowflakes swirled outside the glass office windows, softening the harsh outlines of the city and casting a serene, reflective atmosphere. She entered the office, noticing his calm demeanor and the thoughtful expression on his face. There was something in his eyes she hadn't seen before, a hint of anticipation, a trace of a plan, and a subtle warmth that instantly made her pulse quicken. "Please, have a seat," he said. His tone was steady, but carried an unusual undertone of excitement. She sat, heart slightly racing, curiosity tinged with cautious optimism. "Is this for another milestone?" she asked softly, still unsure if this was another milestone or another test. He smiled faintly. "You've done more than I could have imagined. Your initiative, creativity, and integrity have exceeded expectations." She leaned forward slightly. He paused, letting the words settle. "I want to offer you something unexpected." Her brow furrowed slightly. She had received promotions before, recognition, praise, but his tone suggested something deeper, something extraordinary. "Tell me," she whispered, curiosity and anticipation intermingling. He reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to her with deliberate care. Her hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal. Inside was a letter detailing a unique opportunity, a leadership program designed not only to expand her career, but to empower her to create initiatives for underprivileged communities. Funding, resources, mentorship, it was a level of support she had never dreamed of receiving. It was more than a career opportunity. It was a chance to effect change on a larger scale, to lift others as she had been lifted. Tears threatened to spill over. She looked up, eyes meeting his. This is incredible." He shook his head gently. "Don't thank me. Thank yourself. You earned this through persistence, skill, and heart." She sat in stunned silence for a moment, processing the enormity of the gift she had been given.
Her mind wandered back to her life before this moment, the struggles, the quiet despair, the relentless hope that had driven her forward. She realized that all of it had prepared her to seize this opportunity fully. And yet, the real twist came moments later. The CEO continued, his gaze steady, almost conspiratorial. Her eyes widened. He gestured toward the window. Outside, in the falling snow, a small figure huddled near the edge of the plaza. A woman, poor, shivering, trying to shield herself with a thin blanket. Her presence was almost unnoticed amidst the bustling city, yet the CEO's eyes never left her. "She reminded me of someone," he said quietly. "Someone who, like you once were, has potential, but is overlooked by the world." He handed her another envelope. Inside were funds, resources, and a clear plan to provide employment, training, and shelter for the struggling woman. The CEO's idea was simple yet profound. Her journey from struggle to success had prepared her to uplift others, creating a ripple effect that would transform lives beyond her own. Her hands shook, tears streaming freely now. She felt an overwhelming mix of gratitude, responsibility, and awe. This was more than recognition. It was trust, belief, and a call to purpose. The CEO's final words resonated deeply. "Your life changed because someone believed in you." She left the office that day, the snow crunching softly under her feet, her mind racing with possibilities. She saw the woman on the sidewalk again, small and vulnerable, yet brimming with silent hope. With the resources provided, she approached her cautiously, introduced herself, and offered an opportunity that could change her life, the same kind of chance she had been given months earlier.
The woman looked up, eyes wide with disbelief and hope. She whispered. "Yes," she said softly, a smile spreading across her face. "For you." In that moment, the cycle of transformation came full circle. She realized that true success wasn't just about personal achievement. It was about impact, about lifting others, and about paying forward the opportunities she had been gifted. Over the following weeks, she mentored the woman personally, guiding her through training, helping her navigate challenges, and instilling confidence. The woman flourished, slowly gaining skills, independence, and self-belief. Watching her growth reminded the young professional of her own journey, of the challenges she had overcome, and the people who had once believed in her potential. Word of her initiatives began to spread within the company and beyond. Colleagues, inspired by her leadership, started contributing to social projects. Clients noticed the human-centered approach she brought to her work. Her story became a beacon of hope, a testament to perseverance, empathy, and the transformative power of opportunity. Months later, she stood on a small stage at a community event, addressing a crowd of young people eager to change their lives. She spoke about resilience, hard work, and the importance of believing in oneself. She shared her journey, from a young woman clutching a folder in a lobby to a professional empowered by recognition, to a mentor changing lives. Her voice was steady, confident, yet tinged with emotion. "I was once overlooked, unseen, and uncertain," she told them, "but someone believed in me, and that belief changed everything. Today, I want to be that someone for you. Never underestimate your potential." As she looked out at the audience, she saw faces filled with hope, determination, and gratitude. And in that moment, she understood the depth of her transformation, not just professionally, but personally and spiritually. She had turned struggle into opportunity, doubt into confidence, and chance into purpose. The CEO, watching quietly from the side, smiled. His belief had sparked a chain reaction, one that had grown far beyond what he could have imagined. And she, once a young woman seeking opportunity, had become a catalyst for change, impacting countless lives and redefining what it meant to succeed. The snow continued to fall softly outside, white and pure, reflecting the light of possibility. She walked through it, not as a timid newcomer, but as a woman transformed, grateful, empowered, and ready to change the world, one life at a time. Her story, once defined by struggle, rejection, and uncertainty, had reached a powerful climax of recognition, empowerment, and impact. It was a story of hope, resilience, and human connection, a testament to the extraordinary power of believing in oneself and lifting others along the way. And as the city buzzed around her, she knew that this was only the beginning. The journey of transformation, for herself and for those she touched, would continue, a ripple expanding outward,
a living proof that one act of faith can change countless lives forever.